I almost didn't figure out how to resolve that. What's up, dudes? HW. It's a snowy day out here. Snowy day out in Nashville. We're about to get snowed in all weekend. And, oh man, it's going to be nice to just be in all weekend. I got a poker game tonight. It's going to get canceled, but that's all right. Because I'd rather be snowed in than dealing with what all those people in Southern California are dealing with right now. So hearts and prayers out to all those people hit by the Eaton fire and the Palisades fire. And man, they got a real situation over there. So Lord Jesus, protect them, you know. So today I want to talk about guitar heroes, why we don't have any guitar heroes left. And right before we do that, I just want to say I played this guitar on the channel a couple times, and I got a lot of questions about it, and I went and looked it up. So I just found this randomly on Marketplace. And it turns out, I was like, I never seen a guitar like that. It said it was a Japanese model, and it is a model designed for the Japanese market. And it's a signature model of a guy named Sakiro Yamauchi. I think that's how you say his name, Sakiro Yamauchi. And he plays in a band called Fuji Fabric. And on the back here, there is an insignia that says Fuji Fabric. And he has a couple signature models. This is by far his coolest signature model. There's another one that's just a red Strat. But I just randomly found this on Marketplace from this dude who sells a ton of guitars out of Florida. Puts them on a white shag carpet. It takes pictures, and they're all over Marketplace, and he ships them to you. And so this is a great guitar. It looks like it has a bone nut. That looks like bone to me. I guess it could be synthetic, but every bone nut I've got looks like that. And then, I don't know, maybe someone put that on there. And it's got the wide range with the new, like, real, magnets in there. And it's a great guitar. I really like it. It's kind of, in my head, it's like my Telecaster, like my version of a Telecaster. I really dig this thing. But I want to talk about guitar heroes. Do we have any more guitar heroes? And this is something that kind of came up in the comments of yesterday's video. And the reason is, I was making some comments about the amp market slowing down and the guitar market slowing down. And I think there's a change in demographic happening. And me as an amp collector, I'm okay with the fact that I think the amp market is going down and will continue on a downward trajectory. I don't see a huge resurgence in amps. Now maybe we see something change economically and all the prices go up because we get a bunch of inflation. That could happen. But that video was called "Amps Are Dead" and they're not coming back. And I made the case for that in that video. But I made a comment that said something like, John Mayer's almost 50. He's 47 years old now. I went and looked it up. And there's no more guitar heroes. There's no more people drawing new players into the instrument and making the guitar community grow that way. And that's really what I meant by guitar hero. But a lot of people in the comments had other feelings. And I wanted to talk about that. Kind of when I think of a guitar hero, I really think of someone like Eddie Van Halen, where there's an entire generation of guitar players that you can see their influence on those players. To me, Van Halen was that. If you were a guitar player, if you were born in the early 80s, late 70s, and you were learning the guitar, and you ended up being about 14, 15, 16 years old when Eddie bust out on the scene. Right? I mean, he might have been 9, but you know what I'm saying? He was still big. Van Halen was still big into the 90s. If that was you, you at one point in your life thought Eruption was the greatest thing ever played, right? You thought Hot for Teacher was it. You can see those Eddie licks and all that, and the influence he even had on the gear market. I got all these old 80s guitar magazines. all the guitars looked like Eddie's guitars, even ones that he wasn't endorsing, right? It was that time. Eddie was so influential in that period for guitar players. You can just see his fingerprint all over a generation of guitar players. I think that same thing is true of John Mayer. You can't spend much time on YouTube without really quickly pulling out, finding someone who's playing a Stratocaster or some type of guitar and pulling out a very John lick, or, they're doing the... You know what I mean? There's going to be some version of it's like you're not allowed to play guitar on YouTube for more than 8 minutes unless that gets played. It's kind of a rule that they tell you when when you upload the videos. You must play slow dancing intro. You know what I mean? And I think that's John's fingerprint on stuff. I think other players have put that fingerprint. You're not going to be able to watch too much stuff online or too much guitar content without hearing a reference to Hendrix. Even just the technique of double stops. It's funny. Even if you don't play it in a Hendrixy way, you can't help but hear a little Hendrix in there. And then you'll even see a lot of lessons that just refer to double stops as like Hendrix double stops. And really what they mean is double stops, and the backing track and the feel we have is a little bit bluesy. And that immediately makes it feel like Hendrix. It makes it feel like R&B blues rock, And that is his signature. Stevie, if you get into any sort of blues playing, you're going to get into this Texas blues sound, Texas blues. And it is just that loud Stratocaster kind of sound, but it's Stevie sound. It's like that. It's a little bit of that Jimmy Page sloppiness, but it's bluesy guitar, and it's different than the Hendrix stuff. It's just that sound. And those guys, so many people still today try to get their fingers to do what those guys were doing and get that sound. And the sound is synonymous with them. And I think so many people pick up the instrument, coming this way. I went and saw a guy play named Lance Lopez. He's a great guitar player. And first thing I said is, I never heard of Lance Lopez because he was on the bill. And I went to go see a friend, and Lance Lopez was on it. First time I saw him. And I said, I don't know Lance Lopez. What does he do? And the guy said, Texas blues. This guy, he's got his dial tuned to like whatever channel Stevie Ray Vaughan was on. That's what someone said to me. And that's exactly how I would describe Lance Lopez's playing. It's very much that Texas blues, Texas heat kind of style. And that's the thing. You refer to whole sounds, whole styles, whole genres in those terms. Now, some people in the comments were like, hey, one guy put, you've clearly never heard of Tyler Bryant and Chris Buck and Jared James Nichols. And to that I would say, I have definitely heard of those guys. And you know what? Maybe those guys are guitar heroes. Maybe the definition of guitar hero is a little different than I kind of meant it. Because the more I think about it, the more I realize, is a guitar hero just someone who players who aren't playing guitar want to come in and play the instrument? I think that's at least one aspect to it, but it's maybe not the whole thing. I do know those guys. Chris Buck, obviously, Friday Fretworks, big on YouTube and everything. And I've seen his, or I've heard his band's music. I've listened to it. Obviously, I've seen his stuff around. He's Line 6 stuff he's done. The Friday Fretworks is like really big on YouTube. Of course, I've watched a bunch of those. Cardinal Black, I've listened to their music, like I said. Definitely heard of Chris Buck. It'd be hard to be on YouTube and not hear of him. Jared James Nichols is a guy who lives in town here, and I have a mutual friend with Jared. Jared is amazing. I've seen Jared play twice. He is like a Viking. A Viking went through a time machine and learned how to play a Les Paul with P90's fingerstyle. I mean, it's like it's like that's his battle axe. He's an amazing player. I'm not trying to take anything away from those guys. Tyler Bryant, I probably know the least of those guys, but I am a little bit familiar with his music and what I've seen content-wise from him online. I heard some other people point out Grace Bauer. I saw Grace Bauer live too, and I've seen her around town a couple times and never had the guts to say, hey, I watch your stuff on YouTube and Instagram. Like you don't do that when you see people. I don't know, at least I don't. But maybe I just get a little I don't know what's the word, but yeah, I mean, maybe those are guitar heroes. Those are certainly amazing players. I mean, some other ones that come to mind that I feel like are in that grouping, of like people I don't really consider guitar heroes, but are obviously really famous, influential guitar players are Ariel Posen, is Joey Landreth. Joey Landreth I met one time, such a nice guy, but kind of before he really blew up, I met Joey Landreth. I said, "Hey, you're Joey Landreth." And he goes, "Hang on, I'm calling an Uber." And he called his Uber and then he sat down at my table and chatted with me for 3-4 minutes while his Uber showed up. And we talked about IRs real quick, and I asked him what he was using live IR wise, and it was a fun little chat. But I kind of think when I think of Guitar Hero, I really am thinking of that someone who crosses over into the top 40 genre that becomes so big that like some number of Americans who don't play the guitar and are not into music or YouTube content pick up, want to go, wow, that's awesome. I'd love to do that. People who bring in kids to play the instrument. And I think that's Eddie, that's Prince, that's John, that's I heard someone say, and this is the other guy I think actually might be have the strongest case for Guitar Hero today, is Tim Henson from Polyphia. Tim Henson is, although you're not going to see Tim Henson on, I don't think you're going to see Polyphia on like, Letterman or Conan or somebody like that. He is a guy who's probably bringing people into the instrument, has several signature guitars, which kind of clue you in that the guitar world is paying attention to him. Young people want to be like him, because that's kind of who they go after. And he is obviously playing some really incredible music, and it might not be what I reach for on a daily basis, but I've definitely listened to Polyphia on my Spotify playlists. And, it's a whole vibe. We would call that a little bit scene back when I was younger, but it's a whole vibe. And yeah, that's a really strong case. But a little bit I do feel like maybe we're not going to get any more guitar heroes, because as the internet has fragmented entertainment, meaning, it used to be who was the top of the Billboard charts really mattered. And now I would say it really doesn't matter, because like that gentleman said, he might spend most of his time listening to Cardinal Black and Tyler Bryant and Jared James Nichols and Tom Bukovac's, Plexi Soul record, which I was just listening to recently. And that might really be where that guy spends most of his time. So to him, it may be like, oh, you know what? This is where popular music is today. And because he can just turn on his Spotify playlist rather than listen to Top 40 radio or something. And so maybe it makes sense that because as entertainment is more compartmentalized, is more fragmented, and we all have these different places we can go, look, you can kind of exist in this whole little world where your Instagram shows you only what you're into, Spotify gives you what you're into, YouTube gives you only what you're into. And so then you can miss people who are huge, you know what I mean? And that's kind of the way, your parents will be like, who's this? And it's like, it's the number one rock star in the world. How have you missed him? This is Eddie Van Halen. Never heard of him. Where's Frank Sinatra? Is that, that kind of thing is probably more popular today. So maybe I'm wrong for saying we don't have any more guitar heroes, in the sense that we don't have anyone who dominates Top 40 radio with a guitar in their hand. Maybe we do have all these other people like Grace Bauer and Tim Henson and Jared James Nichols and stuff, and Marcus King. I listen to Marcus King, and I see that. Gary Clark, I almost said Gilby Clark. That's a different guitar player altogether. But Gary Clark Jr., it might be another guy who actually has brought people into the instrument. It's funny. I have a couple friends who are big Gary Clark Jr. fans. None of them play the instrument. They all just kind of like R&B and blues a bit. And they are really into Gary Clark Jr. So maybe he actually has that crossover audience, and I'm just not aware of it. I don't know. It's a fun thing to think about. Where are the guitar heroes, and will there ever be another guitar hero in on the level of Eddie? With that iconic pinstriping. I saw a video online the other day. A guy had pinstriped his mailbox and still has it, like Eddie's, and. But maybe that's not what a guitar hero is anymore, and maybe it doesn't need to be. I don't know. With licks like that, I ain't no Guitar Hero. I'll tell you that much. HW.